constantly am listening to people like Sam Harris talk about meditation. And myself, I've taken meditation classes and actually felt like I got something out of it, but there's still that thing that blocks me from doing it consistently. But the biggest thing that someone like you or I is at war with is that if you give me 30 seconds of free airtime in my brain, I'm going to start thinking up concepts for content because it's very beneficial for me to do so. I've trained myself for all these years to do so. And it's just like, that is, if anything, that's the problem, is that I film my life when I was driving here today and I'm listening to a podcast. If anyway, I'm almost trying to prevent myself from my brain just going crazy and cooking up some new ideas.
Yeah, I mean,
that's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah, I just talked to Phil DeFranco about it. He's a fantastic guy, fantastic YouTuber. But
love Phil.
Mad love to Phil.
I always see Phil watching my stories, and I'm like, what the fuck are you watching my stories for, Phil? What is that? You don't have enough time for this.
But I was talking to him about that idea, and like, now I do shit. Like, I do things where I go out of my way not to have a phone with me, not to put it on my story, not to film it. Because it's forcing myself to do something just for me. And that's like a weird thing to do. Like the idea that as a human being, you have to force yourself to do actions, activities, behaviors just for yourself, because your default is to share it. Your default is to externalize that.
Yeah.
And like the fact that that's become the normal, and what's not normal is you doing something for just yourself. Like, what a fucked up concept.
Yeah, you ever do something real cool, like, I don't know, hang out with a bunch of people who are also well-known on the internet, or you like have a crazy meal, or you go on like a little day trip or whatever, then you realize at the end of it that you were so present that you didn't think to Snapchat it at all. And that then you get that little weird pang of like, oh,
missed opportunity.
I could have been letting everybody know how great my life was today.
That is
but I forgot.
Fucked. That is so fucked. Yeah. And by the way, I don't think that's unique to people with big audiences like you.
Oh yeah, that's what's funny too, is that it's definitely people with 1,000 followers feel the same way.
It's that photo that anyone's ever seen of any concert in the last 6 years, where you've got the musician, you've got the star, center frame, standing on stage, and then in the foreground are 10,000 cell phones in the air.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not here to love this music. I'm here to share this.
Yeah.
And it's hard to have this discussion without like, okay, boomer, roll your eyes and walk away. But I think there's realities to this.
Yeah.
Like there's value to doing things for just yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that like when you have the opportunity to either share it or do it for just you,
because
we always lean to share it.
There was a time a couple of years ago where the whole message that you're kind of putting out there now of, or not message, but, sort of talking about your life and saying, oh, I was living in New York. I was completely focused on my business to the point that it was kind of pathological and it was destructive to my life and my relationships and stuff. And you deciding like, I want to step it back. I want to focus more on living a good life and figuring out what a good life is exactly and living that versus just producing insane amount of content. I don't know that would have resonated with me a couple of years ago. I don't know if I was grown enough to have understood the value of that. And now it's like it's starting to click and make sense. I might have actually just tuned out if that was what you were talking about a couple of years ago.
Yeah, well, look, I think that a couple of years ago, like people didn't understand what any of this was. Remember the first time you heard the term YouTuber burnout?
Yeah.
You're like, come on, don't be a little bitch. Like you make videos, like
just
come on.
The idea that there's something noble about driving yourself crazy to make a whole lot of content.
That's right.
It's kind of the startup mentality too.
Exactly
like you work 80 hours a week, but you help create a really good app. So it's okay. This is a noble sacrifice on your part.
It's hustle porn. And I am hugely guilty of being like a huge proponent of glamorizing the hustle. And I think that there's value to it. And I think that hard work is admirable. But this idea that the only way to find success or happiness in life is by like making wild sacrifices and all you do is that hustle, I think is completely incorrect.
Right.
I think it's unfair.
Yeah.
And I think that like so much of my early content was me sharing that. I think that I'm just a different person now. And I think to what you're saying, like I wasn't that person then. So if you stepped in or any viewer stepped in and I was the person that I am now 5 years ago, I think it would have been really fucking boring.
Yeah.
It would have seemed self-indulgent.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still self-indulgent, but I make fucking videos about my life.
But then the problem is that at a certain point you have to start saying no to everything. Like you right now, I was listening to Joe Rogan talk about this the other day. Got offered a role in Kevin Smith's movie. And Kevin Smith was going to fly him out for a couple of days to do it. Joe's just like, no, I'm not doing it. Like, you're a good friend of mine, but I don't do anything anymore because I've already got a life that I'm really happy with. And every single time I have to get on a plane, it's a couple of days of doing stuff that I'm not as happy with. So logically speaking, I then have to start turning down all the shit that's being thrown at me. And I'm sure you end up doing a shitload of it too, myself as well. You have to end up prioritizing something, emphasizing something.
Yeah, it's tough. Gary Vaynerchuk described it to me when I was talking about it as like drowning in a tidal wave of opportunity. And like, good for you. God bless you if you are ever in a position where you feel like you're drowning in opportunity.
Right.
But for somebody like me, whom, I spent the first decade of my career just like struggling and so poor and having a little kid and little boy that I could barely support, and any opportunity was such a huge deal. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in a position where there's myriad opportunity coming from every direction. To say no feels so irresponsible that even now, like I'm 38 years old, I'm financially in a great place, and I feel really strong about my career. I still like pay a therapist hundreds of dollars an hour to help me understand and come to terms with this idea that it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
It's okay to like let people down every once in a while, because like if you don't look out for number one, like if you don't keep an eye on yourself, like nobody else is going to.
Yeah.
The world's just going to kind of take till there's nothing left.
And the problem is that most people can't understand that they're taking something from you. Like with me, when I asked you to come do an interview, like being in the position I am in, I understand it to be me asking you to spend a couple hours less with your daughter, realistically. That might, I don't know that it's exactly a trade, like probably she's got stuff to do, but you're really kind of asking people to spend less time with their family when you ask them to do stuff for you.
Yeah, I mean, it comes to prioritization, and like, so let's talk about you asking me to come here, and like we've been going back and forth for a year plus. You've always been totally cool about it.
Appreciate
I'm
that.
a fan of your show.
Thank you.
I wanted to come on here. I think there's value in this conversation, value to me personally in this conversation. And then like, if you remember, like when you texted me, you're like, what time works for you? I know you get up early. And like literally like 11 o'clock is the exact time where I can drop my daughter off at school and then just drive straight here. And so there was such kind of a mutual respect for like, can this work? If this can work, let's do it.
Right.
And it makes making those decisions really easy. And I think, Joe Rogan's example of like being in this movie, no, like there's no such thing as just flying there and shooting for a day and flying back. Like Joe Rogan's right. That's several days of his life. That's interrupting his bread and butter, which is his, whether it's his podcast or any of his stand-up or the things that he's really passionate about. And I think that like it takes real discipline to be able to navigate that in your career. And I'm trying to find a happy medium for me right now.
Right.
I just like, I'm constantly overwhelmed with this idea that like I'm letting my YouTube audience down.
Yeah.
And that kills me. I feel like I owe everything I have to my YouTube audience.
But do you feel like they feel let down? I feel like you've been pretty consistent.
I don't
Maybe
know.
Not daily exactly, but
I feel that way. I don't know if that's the truth, but like, I feel so wildly indebted to my YouTube audience, even when they're shitting on me.
Right.
Even when they're picking on me, I
Right.
still feel like, you know what? Thanks for caring enough to still make fun of me.
Right.
It's like my YouTube audience gave me everything.
And you have to keep that perspective on the fact that it's so weird to have that many subscribers off of just being yourself.
Off of just, it's the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
And I'll never come to terms with it.
And it's crazy too. The other day I was having a conversation with somebody, and they're talking to me about this. Well, actually, it's T.I., this rapper. They did a big podcast deal and stuff, and now he's out there. They're putting so much money into this podcast. So much
What
to promote.
T.I.'s hosting?
Yeah, it's like
Okay.
his podcast. And he has like a 3-year deal. He got so many millions of dollars to do it. He still gets X percentage on the back end. It's just, I'm baffled because now I'm like, holy fuck, like me starting a podcast in 2013 was literally me setting my iPhone up on a tripod in the back of my bike shop. And now podcasting has got to the point where it's this big that there's this much money being thrown around. It makes me feel incredibly lucky because it's like, how the fuck are you going to be able to compete and start something independently if it gets to the point where there's so many people on the platform that are being propped up by giant backings?
Yeah, I mean, look, YouTube's no different.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
To succeed on YouTube, I remember like 8 years ago, 10 years ago, I had such a formula for making viral videos that I would know definitively if something would be viral.
Snowboard being dragged behind the truck or whatever.
New York City. And even like my daily vlog, I just like, part of the motivation to start that was the people who were doing daily shows then were like talented, smart people like Fun for Louie and Ben Brown and creators like that, but they were just talking into a point and shoot. And I remember like watching them talking to a point and shoot, and it was like, you know what? I find myself interested in their life. What if it wasn't a shaky, terrible fucking image? What if it was like beautifully shot? And what if it was really easy to watch? And what if it felt like a movie every day? And that's like not that, maybe I was the first one to get there, but it's not that brilliant of an idea. I think if I didn't do it, somebody else would have figured that out right away. But like, do that now. No one's going to give a shit about you on YouTube.
But even you saying that, though, it's like I can imagine somebody coming out having a interesting perspective on vlogging, and it really not being that difficult for them to sort of fill in the blanks if they shoot it in a cool way. Yes, granted, if they film it the way that you were filming your vlogs, which you put a lot of effort into and stuff, it's like you're going to have to advance beyond that.
Yeah.
The editing is going to have to be interesting. When I look at Emma Chamberlain's shit, I'm like, this is interesting to me because she's got this sort of like meta editing analysis where she's jumping back and forth a lot of times while she's editing it and adding in more thoughts and stuff. And I'm like, this feels very, very new and modern to me.
Emma is like, I'm a huge fan of hers and everything she does, but she's someone who came to the platform with a style that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
And you can look at that and see like, this is an evolution, not sort of a revolution in style. But no one's ever done that before. I remember, fuck, it had to have been like 4 years. I was pretty early in my vlog, maybe like 6 months into it, reading a tweet that was like, I don't know who wrote it, but it said, I hate all vloggers except for Casey Neistat and David Dobrik. And I was like, who the fuck is David Dobrik? How dare he be, how dare I have to share this tweet with him? And I watched one of his videos and I was like, oh shit.
Right.
I was like, what balls on this kid
Right.
to cut out everything but the funny moments.
Right.
Like who would possibly, this doesn't make any sense. Like joke, setup, punchline, setup, punchline, setup, punchline, and then the episode's over. And I was like, this is going to explode.
Yeah.
You know, now he's arguably the biggest creator out there because he brought something new to the table. That even to this day, like there's a couple of copycats, but that's hard to duplicate.
The interesting thing with me when I look at David Dobrik too, though, is that he's somebody who seems like he saw YouTube as a way for him to build up towards getting a TV show and being a mega celebrity and everything. Whereas for me, YouTube was always pretty much the goal, and there's not really any deal that anybody could ever give me that would make me want to like give up ownership of my shit or to do something different. Like, and that's one thing I always really liked about your shit. And every time that somebody tells me like, oh, you should talk to so-and-so about doing a TV deal or whatever, I'm like, you know, I know what I want to do, and I've listened to so many people that I respect talk about what it's like to go and do a TV show, and it really just doesn't seem like it's the move for me. I feel like it would take me further away from what I'm trying to do. NoJumper.com. Like, comment, subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want one of these, you know where to go. And then No Jumper Facebook too. Link is down in the description. Some good stuff going on over there. Appreciate y'all watching this.